One, two, three.
Welcome to Scéalta. My name is Joe Austin, and if you've just joined us, can I remind you that Scéalta is a joint production of Féile to Hear and Féile An Phobail. And over the years, we have had many guests, some exciting, some interesting, some just bizarre. And our guest today is Leanne Rooney. And I have to say, of all the guests and of all the campaigns and of all the issues that we have had the privilege of covering, this is probably the most sensitive, it's the most inspiring, and it's probably the most important. You're the operations officer for the charity, the breast cancer charity, Féile An Phobail. Can you tell me, where does the charity come from and how did it begin?
Yes, Joe, thanks for having me here today to talk about Féile An Phobail. So, Féile An Phobail is the breast cancer charity for Northern Ireland. It was founded back in 2006 by my sister Noleen. Noleen was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2001 when she was just 22 years old. And from that time then Noleen knew what was involved with the breast cancer diagnosis. She knew what people needed and she set out on a mission to help those people. So in 2006 she formed the charity Féile An Phobail, and that was to support breast cancer patients here in Northern Ireland.
I think it's amazing that someone at that age discovering that she has breast cancer doesn't crumple up into a ball and cry. And if I would imagine if I had gotten news like that, I would be devastated. I would be thinking that everybody else has got a good deal and I've got a bad deal. The last thing I would think of was, how do you help others? How do you turn what is an absolute negative into what of course has became a very positive campaign? So if you don't mind, and I don't want to revisit hurt for you, but tell me a bit about Noleen.
Noleen was my oldest sister. There's three of us, Noleen, myself, and then our younger brother Brian. We grew up here in Durhamhill and life was good. In 2001, Noleen had just been away on holiday, living life like a normal 22-year-old, and she came back and she said to me that she had to go to the doctors, that she'd found a lump. And at that stage, I think both of us was really naive about it. We just thought, you know, you've heard of breast cancer, but you've never really heard about it in somebody so young. So in a way, we were worried, but in a way we weren't. So as soon as she went to the doctors, she got an immediate appointment and she was referred straight to the hospital. And we went that day, we went in, she had her mammogram. Very surreal experience. There was lots of older women sitting in the waiting room. Like, say Noleen was 22, I was 19. We didn't grasp what was actually going on here. There was people very emotional and upset. There was people praying. There was people just, we couldn't get our heads around, like, what's going on here? We didn't realise the extent of it. Yeah. And that day, it was a whole afternoon. All those ladies got up and left, and it was only me and Noleen left sitting in the waiting room. And they called us in and they told Noleen that she had breast cancer, and it was very advanced at that stage. So Noleen had had this lump for quite a long time and just kept putting it to the back of her head. So it was like, oh my God, like what's actually going on here? What's happening? We left the hospital and we had an appointment the very next day to go and see a consultant. At that time, my mummy, who had reared us all on her own, was going away on holiday for the first time ever with her friend. So we decided we wouldn't tell my mummy until she got her holiday and came back. So there was a lot of appointments, a lot of things going on, and we just had to take a step back and go, right, okay, this is happening. But again, I think even at that stage, it just didn't dawn on us the extent of Noleen's diagnosis. Mummy came back from her holidays and we told her, and Mummy and Daddy fell to bits. It was just the craziest situation, you know, to be in. Nobody really understood, I suppose, what was going on. Noleen was very brave about it all. I don't think that I would have been as brave as that. She still continued to work as much as she could, still continued to go out, which was great. And then the reality hit, you know, she needed really intensive chemotherapy, she needed surgery, and she would have had radiotherapy. So that was the start of Noleen's breast cancer journey. Throughout that whole time, when I think back, you're going to autopilot, you just keep going and going. But when I do think back about it, I'm like, how did she do that? You know, even going in for the surgery and she had a single mastectomy and a reconstruction, and the reconstruction was made from the muscles, her tummy muscles and things like that. So it was really, you know, intense surgery that she had. And she just took it on the chin. She just said, this has happened to me, and if I can do this and it prevents somebody else from going through this, then that's exactly what I'm going to do. So that was the start of her journey. She started out on a positive, and she kept a positive attitude the whole way through. There were times that it was so dark, you know. After her surgery, after chemo, she had a re-diagnosis. That was okay, we dealt with that. Then as the years continued on, it was re-diagnosed and more chemo, more treatment, everything, and it was just, breast cancer became a way of life for me. So I was 19 when Noleen was diagnosed, and breast cancer has literally been my whole adult life. She decided to start the charity then in 2006. There was people coming to hospital in an ambulance, and they were with other people, and they came and they got their treatment, but they had to wait until every other person was finished before that they could go home. And Noleen just thought, I need to help people here. So it was things like travel to hospital, essentials that people needed, and she just did a fundraising event, and I think the first one raised over £1,000, and it was like, yeah, you know, we can do this works. And it just went from there. Throughout, from 2006 to 2014, when Noleen passed away, she worked tirelessly, whether she was on chemo or getting treatment or whatever. She worked tirelessly. She used to go to the hospital, get her bloods done, and get them checked for chemo, go to the office and sit for a couple of hours till her chemo was ready, and then go back to the hospital and get her chemo. And even things like that, I go, how did she do that? Like, it was unbelievable.
I want to ask you a couple of questions, but I just want to make an observation, because it would be wrong not to do it. She done it because she was a very brave person, she was a very special person, because you were by her side. So I don't think anybody could have went through all of that without having that love and care and concern. So you should take a wee bit of credit yourself, and I know you don't, and I've been warned that you don't, so I think that you should. You're conjuring up pictures that are both very emotional, and I just can't get my head around, to be quite honest. For instance, you talk about those women sitting in a waiting room, you know, and people crying and praying and hoping and all of that. For a 22-year-old and her wee sister to go into that environment, where did you find the courage to just to even sad or run out?
I know, it was really a weird experience. I think because we didn't have knowledge of what was going on, or we didn't have proper knowledge of breast cancer, we were oblivious to kind of what we were going into. And it wasn't until you were in that situation, at one stage, we kind of looked at each other and we were like what's going on here? You know, do you think? She said, do you think I have breast cancer? And I was like, no, there's no way, absolutely not, there's no way. And then we came out of the hospital that day, and I was like, oh my God, the night that we just could not believe that this had actually happened, that Noleen had got this diagnosis.
You mentioned that you had realised that you had a lump for a bit of time prior to that.
Mm-hmm.
Is it common that women would discover a lump? And I have to say, all lumps are not cancer, mm-hmm. I would imagine, but is it common that women would discover this and either wish it away or ignore it? Is it still as common today as it was in 2006? Is this still happening as we're speaking?
Yes, I do feel that there are a lot of people who maybe are aware of something and they don't react immediately. One of the missions that Noleen set out on with the charity at that time was to raise awareness of breast cancer among young women, because as I say, she was the only young girl sitting in the hospital that day, and it was to say it can happen, it has happened, here's me, and be aware of what you have to do, be aware of your body, look, these are the signs to look out for. But yes, at this time there are still people, a lot of younger people would think, oh, it's not going to happen to me, or it can't happen to me, or it's nothing. But early detection does save lives, and that's a really important message that Noleen wanted to get across.
Can I ask you from a personal point of view? I want to return to that awareness and how people can do all that stuff that they need to do, and how families can do it and can rally around. But just in the short term. So, what people watching this will find amazing, if I have a cold, if I have a flu, which I don't have, but if I have a sore tooth, I tell everybody. I tell black taxi drivers who I don't know, I'm not feeling very well today, and all of this. So the first reaction I think that most people would have is to internalize it. What I need to do is I need to get better. Not that I need to help everybody else, I need to get better. So can you recall when Noleen is telling you, because she told you rather than consulted you, when she's saying, I'm going to help everybody else, I'm going to form the only breast cancer charity here, I'm going to do that. Did you think, are you mad? Or just worry about yourself? Was that your reaction, or did you go along with her?
At the first conversation, it was like, okay, yeah, that's okay. If this is what you need, this is going to help you. She wanted to help other people. Let's do this. But I don't think even she realised what was involved, and I don't think she realised how it would have taken off. So we all just, jumped in, did what we had to do. The first event was an abseil down the BT Tower, and of course I was number one to be nominated. So again, it was like, okay, we need to do this for Noleen, let's do it. Never, if this is what she's going through a hell of a worse hard time than me. So we did that. A couple of us abseiled down the BT Tower in Belfast, and that was kind of the start of it. And once you've seen how that was taken off and how much money you could actually raise, it was like, you know what, she can do this, and everybody was there to support her and back her up.
I want to talk about some of the events that you did organise, but can I ask you about your mother and your father? This, and I'm a grandfather and I'm a father and all of that, but this is your worst nightmare. Mm-hmm. This is your wee girl, because although she was 22, for a grandparent and for a parent, she's a wee girl. And they talk about cancer being a family illness, that it hits a family like an actress said, that everybody is devastated. How does a family deal with it? Do they go to prayer? Do they start reading books about the illness? Do they go into their own zone? How did your mother and father take this horrendous news?
After we had the conversation with Mummy and Daddy about Noleen's diagnosis, the two of them fell to bits. But then it was everybody needed to pick themselves up, and we needed to do what Noleen, whatever she needed us to do. My daddy had previously had cancer before. He came from, I know what she's going through here. He knew what the radiation was going to be like. He knew how intense it was, and his heart was broke for that particular reason. My mummy was just, this is my child and I need to do whatever I need to do. And the thing was, life doesn't stop. People still had to go to work. We still needed, an income. We still needed to do everything. And at that time, Noleen's treatment, say for example, the radiation was in Beaver Hospital, the old Beaver Hospital. It wasn't as easy as just getting a bus to it or a taxi. So there was all this additional cost. Back in 2001, nobody had the money to do it then. So I had just passed my driving test, so I was kind of doing taxi service to and fro the hospital, but it was an all day thing. You went first thing in the morning, you stayed there all day, so it was really hard for her to do that. My younger brother, he probably didn't realise the extent of what was going on, and he just kind of plodded on. But as a family, and we've always been like this, you have to pick up the pieces and you have to just get on with it. It's easy to go into a hole and try and forget about it, but that's not the way my family is, and that's what we did. We just had to take each day as it came and deal with whatever came at us every day.
When I was doing a bit of research for it, I came across a quotation, and it was about the Opera House event where 50 women and their families went to, I think it was Legally Blonde.
Mm-hmm.
And I never had the pleasure of meeting Noleen, but her description of the joy that these women together, all facing their worst nightmare, laugh, and their families laughing. And I suspect that for many families it must have been the first, and maybe for some the last laughter that they had. So she must have been, from every sense, an absolutely remarkable woman. And I know you're very proud of her, and we all should be very proud of her. Her fate, unfortunately, ended with her death. At that stage, the Pretty in Pink idea, was there a danger that it was going to die with her? Was it something that you were just gritting your teeth and saying, no, this is for all those women, but it's for my sister? Did that kick in?
In the months leading up to before June 2014, when Noleen passed away, she had become quite ill. She had an infection and various different things, which meant she couldn't get chemo. But we were 13 years down the line at that stage, so Noleen had been re-diagnosed several times. You know, it came back in her breastbone, it was in her lungs, it was in her liver. She'd had all of these diagnoses, but at each time she bounced back and bounced back. So never once did it cross our minds that this was the end. Never. And maybe that was naivety on our part,
bravery,
or it was you were just keeping hope alive. So even though she was really ill and she was in hospital, she was actually on the phone to the office dictating, you know, what needed done. So I never had that conversation with Noleen to say, what happens if you're no longer here? That's a conversation that I would never have wanted to have.
Yeah.
And in hindsight, do I wish I had have had it? Absolutely. There's so many of those conversations I wish I had had. So one day Noleen's here and one day she's not. And I don't think people understood that this charity was run solely by Noleen. So everything that happened, the day-to-day stuff, the finances, everything was dealt with by Noleen. So I was now in this situation where there was no Noleen anymore, and I was like, what do we do? What do we do? So Noleen had a really good board of trustees at that time, and we got together and we spoke about it, and it was an amazing legacy that she left behind.
Absolutely.
And in my mind and from my family's mind, there was no other choice. The charity had to continue. There was no choice about stopping it or, you know, taking a few steps back. It had to go, and it had to go forward the way I believe Noleen would have wanted it to go forward. So that was never an option that we looked at. There was never going to be a charity anymore. There was only one choice, and that was it.
So what is the primary purpose of Pretty in Pink? So what is, you know, if you were to set out a list of what you need to do and follow it through, what's your first objective?
So Noleen's first objective at that time, and it's still mine, is to be aware, be breast aware, and raise awareness around breast cancer. So back in 2006, Noleen's was more catered to young girls, young women. That changed throughout the years, because then there was so many people that needed help, and that's what nobody realised at that time. So then it was for everyone to be aware, and then it was for men also to be aware. So that's probably the most important message, you know. Know your body, know what to look out for. If there are any signs, go straight to your GP. So that was Noleen's main mission. She wanted, as I said, early detection does save lives. And do we question if Noleen had went earlier, would have things have been different? Absolutely. But the most important thing was Noleen wanted to help people.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the Opera House event there, and there is a quote from Noleen saying, if I can make anyone's life a little bit easier, even if it's just for an hour, then my work is done. And that's exactly what she did. So the Opera House outing was just one thing that she did for patients. The financial side of things was also another important thing. Helping with utilities, home heating, electric, food. People don't realise you're working, you've salaries coming in, and then all of a sudden that stops. But life continues, your bills still come in, things still need done. So that was important to Noleen as well. And it was also important that we weren't means tested. So everybody's situation is different, and she didn't want to be means tested charity, and I have continued that since 2014, and I think that's important for people. 2 salaries and then it's down to 1. People are struggling, and that's a really important point.
It just strikes me as you're speaking there, and it might sound a wee bit bizarre, that people in this day and age, when we all have women in our families and friends, and we are those who are women, that this is a killer that people are still reluctant to talk about. That people are still almost kind of so frightened off that they try to ignore it and it doesn't go away. And it strikes me when we both talked about the Opera House event, and I was going to mention to you, and I will mention to you now, the ball in the Titanic, that what Noleen was doing, and all of us were doing, I have to say, was saying, here we are. This is an illness and we need to face it. We need to meet it head on and all of that. So was there an element where she was, I don't mean confrontational, but where she was this determination that it just wasn't going to beat her? Was that in her thinking somewhere?
Yeah, the whole way through. The whole way through, she just kept saying, I need to get better. And there was times where she was well enough to go out and do things, and she just took it all on the chin. But she wanted to get better, and she wanted to fight this. And each time this re-diagnosis came along, it was something else. She used to say, listen, I've been re-diagnosed again today, but here's the positive thing about it. I can get chemo, or I can get this. And that's why she did always bounce back, and she knew she worked so hard for the charity, and she knew that those people that she was helping, that she needed to do that. And I think that part of that did keep her going, and it kept her continuing on to do what she did. She had, and again, I don't think you realise it at the time when you're going through it, but she had an horrific time, and it's only now that you can look back and reflect on it and go, how did she get through all of that? There was times that she was standing at the gala and she was so ill, and she just put her brave face on and away she went. She did her speech and she got the night over with, and that's what she needed to do. There was a time at a gala where she'd just been diagnosed the day before, and if it had been me, I'd have crawled into a ball. But she was there, and she was standing there, and there was so many things that you just did look at her and you said, the inspiration from her was just totally unbelievable. She kept saying, even in those last number of months, she said, it's just a wee blip in the road, it's just a wee blip in the road, we'll be grand. And for the first time ever, she had agreed to come to the Féile with us. She was never able to go to the Féile, and we had Boys Home was on that year, and we'd got tickets for the Féile. And she said, listen, I cannot believe it, I'm going, and I'm so excited, and if I have to get a wheelchair, do you think we could get that? Absolutely, yes. And her and I was still sitting talking about, this night out that we were going. So again, never in my mind did I think for 1 second that she wouldn't be here. That conversation was about 2 weeks before she passed away.
And of course you went on to have a very good partnership with Féile, and Féile adopted you. I should say it's a wet, not a particularly pleasant West Belfast morning, and I rescued you indirectly because you were going out to give out leaflets and to do an awareness program for today, and hopefully I've only rescued you for today and you'll be able to continue with your work. Is there still a need to make people aware?
Absolutely. So since 2014, we've continued Noleen's charity the way she had set it up and her main aims and goals. We have extended that a little bit, which I feel if Noleen was still here, that would have been done a long time ago. So one thing that we have done is opened a new hub at the park centre here, and that is a drop-in centre, and it's working really well. It's making people come in if they have questions surrounding anything. They can drop into us. There's counselling there, there's therapies there. There's so much there now that wasn't there before. And we also have volunteers who are patients, which we didn't have before. So those patients are able to speak, share their experiences, and through that we would hope that everybody talks and somebody would say, I was down in Pretty in Pink today, you know, do you know what to look out for, or here's a wee shower card. We have self-check shower cards. We do lots of online videos, but the awareness still needs to be shouted from the rooftops.
And I have to say, for people who are not in this kind of a profession, which is quite a complicated thing, it's how you make anyone aware of anything. So your relationship with Féile, you also were the Mayor's Charity at one stage, and you also help to do the kids' Christmas parcels at the. Tell me a wee bit about that. What was that, and what did it mean?
So a couple of years ago, we were very luckily nominated as one of the mayoral charities for Councillor Georgie Hargay at that time, and that in itself was almost like a next step up for us. You know, it was another bit of recognition. Somebody was getting behind us, so we had lots of really good advertising around that. From the mayoral charity, then we were given the opportunity to host the Christmas grotto at the Belfast City Market, the Belfast Market at Christmas time. Don't think anyone realised what we were actually going into. It was all talked about and it all seemed this was great, and then we totally went in blind. Never had any of us organised anything as, you know, as massive as that, and I think it needs to be said that we only do have a team of 2 staff, so you're trying to do this with 2 staff.
Amazing, just amazing.
The Christmas market was for approximately 5 weeks, and it was all day, every day. So we had to get Santa, the photographer, we had to get all these children's toys. It was absolute mayhem at the beginning, there's no two ways about it, but it was an amazing opportunity and it was an amazing fundraising event. We got to meet so many lovely people. So many of our patients came down with their children, and we were able, maybe they were 6 months down the line, or, you know, at different stages of their journey, and it was lovely to see them come in with their family and then for them to be in a different position. So yes, it was great, absolutely an amazing time, and we were lucky enough to be selected for the following year, which again, we knew what we were getting into this time. We knew how it was going to go, we knew how to run it, so it kind of ran a bit more smoothly, and we even raised more money the second year.
Amazing, it's just amazing.
So I think the first year we had 4,000 toys go out of our Santa Grotto, and that, you know, when you think back, it is tremendous. You know, that the kids came and that amount of toys went out. They used to drop us in Santa letters, and a lot of them wanted a reply. So there was a wee box at the side of us, which I know City Hall would have replied to, but once that was closed, we were still getting the letters. So I remember going back to the office and thinking, what are we going to do here? And so we started typing these replies, and, you know, what does Santa write back to kids? So there was so many things that we got involved in that we never imagined that, you know, would actually happen. But it was brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
You mentioned the Park Centre hub, and of course there's the Park Centre shop, which I have to say I'm in every day, as the staff will probably tell you, because I can see them putting their hands over their face going, that again, that again. And you mentioned those small team of volunteers who were involved in all of the projects. And I happened to be working with Dirty Hargay at the time, and I looked out the window and seen that Santa Grotto that you're talking about. I would have put some of those children in jail, never mind give them presents, but you got through it. I asked someone yesterday about the project, Pretty in Pink, and they said, well, it's not really a project, we're a family. And small handful of volunteers who are friends, and obviously, you know, there's an inspiration there that's beyond work. It's beyond opening and closing hours. Do you need more volunteers, or do you have the volunteers you need? I know the volunteers you have are priceless, but do you recruit people? I know how do people become volunteers in Pretty in Pink?
So there's two opportunities now that we're in the park centre. So we've got the charity shop, as you mentioned. Brona, who manages the charity shop, is literally on her own. So without volunteers coming in, the shop couldn't run. So she would have volunteers that would come in, help cover her lunch, or let her do various different things. So they're so important. So we would always encourage people, if that's what you wanted to do in the shop aspect of things. You meet so many people, there's so many things that you can learn, and there's other opportunities from there. So that's one side of it. The other side is with me at the hub. So the hub, as I say, is a drop-in centre. People come in very emotional. People are, maybe starting their journey or halfway through, they're struggling. So the shop is a completely different experience from the office. At the minute, my therapist, my complementary therapist and my counsellor are both breast cancer patients. So when you come to the hub, you will have someone who has a knowledge of breast cancer. And I feel that that's really important, and I feel that's why people connect with us so much. So if there was anyone who maybe did want to, get involved, then that is the perfect opportunity. Again, you do meet so many people. It's lovely. You learn new things. You can connect with the shop, and then we hadn't had any events the last 2 years. But once events start up, then again, that's different opportunities. So, say for example, the grotto. We would have had loads of volunteers coming down to help do various shifts at the grotto. So there's so many things as a charity, because we fundraise 24/7. We've different events, so it could be the gala ball, it could be bucket collecting on the road, it could be bag packing. There's so many things that people can get involved in.
You mentioned, and I have to say, until you mentioned it, it didn't really strike me. I will never hopefully be in the position where I'm not close to anybody who has developed any kind of cancer, but breast cancer. And it didn't strike me that, as well as the survival aspect of it, the emotional aspect of it, the pain of it, that on top of all of that you have the financial hardship. Mm-hmm. So how in a practical sense are Pretty in Pink, how are you able to help in that aspect? I mean, you're a charity that you say has to fundraise every day. So how can you help people?
So one of the things Noleen set up at the time was the Pretty in Pink support fund. The support fund was for things such as heating, oil, electric, food, mastectomy underwear, wigs. Everybody's different, so there was a wide range of things that we could help with. One of those things Noleen was really passionate about was we can help with respite breaks for families, because after everything that somebody's been through, it was nice just to maybe go away and forget about things, even if it was for a day. So the support fund has continued to do that. The last 2 years with COVID, there's been so many more people applying and so many more people needing essentials. So throughout lockdown, there was people going into hospital for surgery, but they didn't have pyjamas, they didn't have necessities, they didn't have things like that. So we were able to go and purchase things for them, makeup bags, so that they could just lift and go to hospital. Everybody is different, so some people might need oil, and that's really important. Some people might need childcare. It's just really, it depends on each person. The complementary therapies was one thing that we were getting asked quite a lot to fund. So that's why we opened the hub and do them ourselves. So we can bring people in, and they can have a wee bit of an experience, a wee bit of chit chat, cup of tea, and then get their therapy. And we hope to extend those services for patients' families, partners, children, things like that further down the line.
We've talked about, volunteers. We've talked about finance, which is an absolute imperative. I mean, nothing and none of the ideas and none of the programs and none of the help that you can't give, you can't do without the finance. And maybe it shouldn't be like that, but the reality of it is like that. Mm-hmm. You've talked about the help that people can get. You talked about the need to be conscious of your body and to check and do all of that. We've about 5 minutes left. You'll be glad to hear, because I know you didn't want to do this interview. What's the plans for the future?
So this year, Pretty in Pink are actually celebrating 15 years. So this is our 15th year, which is amazing that we have got this far. And each year, as each year goes, we've just taken another step forward and up. So for the next number of months, our 15-year campaign will continue, and we will concentrate on the breast awareness campaign most importantly, and we will do a lot of fundraising. The hub unfortunately was closed due to COVID, so now that we've reopened, we want to extend the services that we have there. So the counselling services, the complementary therapy services, they are imperative, and especially for people who have been diagnosed through lockdown. So we want to extend upon those and reach out to other people who may not know about Pretty in Pink or may not know that we do have these services available, and we want to help as many people as possible and get as many people on board with us to support our campaign. We are the breast cancer charity for Northern Ireland, and we cover the whole of Northern Ireland, and we want to make that known to people. We want people to know that they can come. They may not need financial help and they may not want counselling, they just maybe want somebody to talk to, and that's okay too. I feel that that's really important. A lot of people don't have anywhere to go, and that's where we want to go for the next number of months, and then continue on with everything else that we do.
If you were leaving one message for the people who are going to watch this interview, just one short message, what would that message be?
I suppose I would encourage people to definitely be breast aware, know about breast cancer, know what to look out for, go for, anyone who can get a mammogram and a regular checkup, go and take that. For anyone who has found something suspicious, go to the GP. And it may not be anything, but at least just go and get it checked out, because early detection saves lives.
It's been a fascinating and a sad interview, and it's been an emotional interview, I have to say, for you and for me. Can I thank Noleen? I know you'll do that for me. Can I thank you? Can I thank the volunteers? Can I thank Pretty in Pink? And can I ask anyone and everyone who gets a chance to watch this to follow your advice? So for taking time out today, Gordon, thank you.
Thank you, Joe.